Look, it is no secret nor surprise that bleed is overpowered in Elden Ring. Grab a bleed weapon, whack seppuku on it, destroy the game. But hey, there has to be a way to do it the best, right? This is perfect bleed. Welcome to what I truly believe might actually be the best build in Elden Ring.
Extraordinary.
I know, Melania. But what about PvP, I hear you ask? He had 2,100 health, that was one attack. But what about a boss that's immune to bleed, I hear you cry? Yeah, this doesn't need the bleed. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the answer to the question I asked myself recently was, so bleed survived the latest patch. Okay, let's do this thing. How can you make the best, most perfect, highest damage, versatile bleed build possible in the entire game? Bleed is overpowered, but what is the overpowered version of overpowered bleed? And the answer to that question, is this. The damage this does, even without the guaranteed bleed proc per attack, is, and I don't use this phrase lightly, nutty cuckoo bananas! So of course then the primary goal is to eliminate the one single weakness bleed has, and that's fighting something that's either super resistant or outright immune to bleed. And the best way to achieve that is by just doing massive amounts of damage irrelevant of if bleed happens or not. A simple concept, but is it executable? Well, you're seeing it is executable as I show how executable all the bosses are with it. We have ourselves a situation there where we abuse a combination of 4 core pillars that lets us, well, decimate existence. The first is power stancing curved swords and the aerial attack that gives us. It hits 4 times. Rapid hits in quick succession unlock a whole world of damage boosting that we will get to. 2. Using that world of damage boosting that rapid hits in quick succession gets us to, well, massively boost our damage. 3. Use the fact that we are doing an aerial attack to take advantage of the quite surprising amount of ways you can boost aerial attack damage. 4. Of course, the bleed itself, the damage that does, and the extra damage doing bleed gives us. Let's go into each a little bit more detail then. The weapons in question are the Scavenger's Curved Swords. It is the perfect weapon for this. Natural bleed, which we want, because we won't be setting this to bleed affinity, and of course the ability to get seppuku'd. Seppuku, as you know, is from the beetle that's invisible in the Ice Lake in the Mount Top of the Giants, and the Scavenger's Curved Sword is just on a random body in Mount Gelmir, both very quick, easy grabs. So the key here is because we will obviously have 80 arcane to fuel massive amounts of bleed procs happening, what we want is to not set the weapons to bleed, because quite frankly we don't need the extra bleed. Between the natural bleed and seppuku, believe me, you will be getting enough bleeds, 1 per jump, unless a very rare, very resistant enemy comes before you. So what we actually do is set them to occult. This achieves one key thing. Makes the weapon scale really nicely with arcane in terms of its physical damage, puts it at a nice B. This means along with our 80 arcane, we actually hit really hard with just our raw physical damage. Which means that we don't need to rely on the bleed, it's just extra on top of already ridiculous output from just the pure sword swings in the air. So that air then, we then give an extra little kick by the Raptor's chest, an extra 10% to aerial attacks, and of course the Talisman that gives an extra 15% damage to aerial attacks. That's already really good. But remember I said we're attacking 4 times in the air because that's the curved sword aerial power stance moveset. Well, this lets us add 3 other really potent little bits to the build. the Rotten Winged Talisman, which gives you up to 30% more damage as you rapidly attack, and after just 2 jump attacks, this is maxed out. Millicent's Prosthetic, exact same effect, but 20% instead of 30%, all good. These are both from the ending rewards of the Millie questline, whether you choose to help her and get the Rotten Winged, or go against her and get the Millie's Prosthetic. You have to make that decision, either get the other one dropped or New Game Plus it, but simple enough. Then we go to our Wondrous Physic. Got a bit of stamina management in here just so we can jump spam easier, but the key is this tier. The crying there is actually the sounds of all of the enemies that you'll be using it on. This does the same thing as the talismans, to up to 20% more damage the more you attack quickly. Which means, after 2 aerial attacks, which are already boosted by 25% just as baseline, you are dealing an extra 70% damage. And it's actually more than that because this is all multiplicative, but I'm keeping it simple for you. Finally then, we have the actual bleed. That just does a flat chunk of the enemy's health, but it also activates, of course, Bloodlord's Exultation from the dungeon under Lanedale, and the White Mask from the triple White Mask invaders in the Lake of Blood in the Blood Palace, combining for an extra 30% damage for 30 seconds when bleed happens. So let me just put this into perspective, what actually happens when you leap at the enemy and do your first aerial attack, which, by the way, is of course buffed by Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow for an extra 35%. Most of the bosses you're seeing me kill here was on a level 120-ish build, so I didn't even have Golden Vow on most of them, didn't have the spare fave points, but on 150, which is still fairly low-ish, of course you can comfortably get that. This is the stat spread, and it really is that simple. The power to level ratio here is off the charts. You jump, hits for 4 times. This will do the damage that it does and proc a bleed. You then jump again and hit for a second 4 times. This second round of 4 attacks is boosted thusly. Yeah, you can see why I busted out the Nutty Cuckoo Bananas earlier. This is why this is so good. This is why it's so perfect. Because truthfully, this isn't even really a bleed build. Bleed's there, of course, and it happens a lot, but any curved sword spamming aerial attacks with this setup would do a ridiculous amount of damage. You'd lose the bonus damage from the bleed, but still. And you can see why the real key to unlocking this is going occult affinity, so you actually keep a lot of physical damage, as opposed to bleed for a little bit of extra bleed which you don't need. You see me jumping into bosses and hitting them for about 4,000 just from the actual weapon attacks, never mind the bleed which then does a load more damage and staggers them a little bit in time for you to do the next aerial attack. It is just a perfect concoction of death. And it's not like it's hard to pull off. This does more damage than the Infinite Laser Comet Azure. It does more damage than Dragon Lightning. It does more damage than anything that hasn't been an outright exploit or bug. And you're doing it by just jumping and attacking, which means you're not putting yourself really at risk. You're not locking into an animation. You're not doing something gimmicky or hard to pull off. You just need to roll around the boss, jump at them and attack, and you do more damage than basically anything is capable of doing in the game, even if the target is immune to bleed. It is ridiculous. Are there way more fun ways to play the game? Yes. But on balance, is there a more overall powerful way? I'm not actually sure there is. So, with that in mind then, there you go! I thought I would bring you my answer to the challenge. What is the best of the best when it comes to a bleed build? My perfect bleed build. Though, perhaps there's still a way to improve it. You could, of course, use Blood Boil Aromatic instead of Flame Grant Me Strength for a bit more damage. Use Commander's Standard instead of Golden Vow for a bit more damage. There's always things like that, but as a general, framework, this is it, Chief. Alrighty, like if you've enjoyed this, subscribe, hit the bell for more. Until we meet again, consider supporting the future of this channel on Patreon down below. It is what keeps us going, and it does mean the world. A goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.